Hey, this is Noor Naseer for AdTech Unfiltered. The internet can be a not-so-nice place for advertisers. One big contributing factor? Toxic online environments filled with trolls, hostility, and offensive comments that undermine brand safety. Today, we're joined by Jim Daly, the CEO of OpenWeb, a company focused on the intersection of community, conversation, and monetization across the open internet. Jim has been pioneering change in ad tech, recently coming off a long tenure as CEO of video outstream platform Teads. Now he's focused on building healthier, more productive digital spaces for publishers, brands, and consumers alike. In this conversation, we'll explore the challenges of toxic online environments, the role that moderation plays in creating safe spaces for dialogue, and why giving publishers the tools to their own communities is an important shift in our industry. Let's get to our conversation with Jim now. Well, Jim, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
So there's no shortage of problems with a web that is toxic in today's world. We're challenged by it as human beings, but we're also challenged by it from an advertising perspective. In terms of creating a healthier web, is there a cross-section between what advertisers want and what consumers want?
It's a good question. So it's an interesting time in social and in communities and in conversation across the web. And the interesting thing is that things like moderation were in vogue maybe a couple of years ago. And since, I think, through some changes that we've seen in our society, have become a bit, out of vogue. But that being said, on platforms, it's important for brands to have a safe place where conversations can take place. And so I think that, to your question, Noor, where it is today is kind of in a intermediate zone, I'd say. Obviously, what we do is we power social platforms for large publishers, and we find it to be incredibly important to keep the conversation healthy and non-toxic. Because, listen, the internet can be an amazing place for so many reasons, and it can also be a pretty dark place for many reasons. And we think that if there's consumers out there that want to jump in and have a meaningful conversation with folks that they might not necessarily know, we think it's best, because we know that this is what they tell us, to keep it productive and non-toxic. So I think that that's kind of where the consumer is heading. And I think that from a brand and a publisher perspective, what I'm hearing is that this is something that they really want and they need as well, even with some of the headwinds that things like moderation have faced.
You and I were talking a little bit off camera about sometimes when we're in the ad tech space, there isn't always a lot of differentiation. Yeah. You're coming from a long tenure at Teads, and now this is the next place that you've embarked on a new opportunity. How challenging is it to be a pioneer for a big challenge that not just the industry, but again, everybody who consumes the internet is looking for a solution for?
I think that so Teads had differentiation in terms of it invented outstream, right? And that, invented the concept of inserting video within editorial content. OpenWeb, and I did not do this, so I could take no credit, but it was really pioneers on that social layer, that community layer at the publisher level. And it's always been really very much a publisher first and almost entirely publisher focused business, not really on the demand side. And so I think that what's exciting about this opportunity, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Noor. There's a lot of ubiquity in the industry, a lot of folks that do very similar things, but maybe have a different angle or a different pitch to what they do. But in this business, I think that communities at a brand level are critically important. And I think that communities at a brand level that are not owned by social platforms is critically important. So if you're a large news publisher or you're a large sports publisher, being able to actually own that community on your own site and utilize their engagement and really drive the conversation and associate your brand with that community, I think it's extremely exciting. It's one of the big reasons I joined the business.
So when I think about the comment section, so often now the comment section that is so alive and well and breathing today is one that does happen on social, whereas I think there has been a depletion in general. This was just me, focus group of one, of going to a publisher site. I don't expect to see a lot of comments there. Obviously, publishers are incentivized to want to bring more of the conversation into their own spaces. Is that a part of a problem you're also trying to solve for, is bringing the conversation and community back to publishers?
Absolutely. We haven't talked about this before, so it's interesting that you bring it up. So what I see the opportunity for this business is you have the commenting section, right? You have the community section that exists at the bottom of an article, which is significantly more engagement than one might expect. We see about 150 million active users across our publishers doing this on a monthly basis, most in the United States and the UK. But if we can take that technology, which is fundamentally like a forms technology, have a dedicated portion of a publisher's site to basically social and community, what we can build with our technology and with our publishers is fundamentally a decentralized, fully decentralized version of Reddit that exists at the publisher level with moderation tools, monetization, all these great things. Because again, I think that the publishing community faces like challenges that I'm sure in some of your other conversations this week you've talked about, which is like Google search disruption, right? Traffic going down. Some are disrupted in a major way. Some are more in a minor way. But fundamentally, there's a decline in traffic that you see at a lot of the publishers. So the publishers that are going to thrive in the future are going to really build around their brand in a more meaningful way that's not dependent on social platforms or search for traffic. And so building that social functionality and having them own the conversation at their own site and own brand level is like, it's a no-brainer and it makes total sense. And it's something that really hasn't been done before.
I'm curious about people behaving in a way that attracts positive interaction in community spaces. I think about when I was a little kid at like elementary school, something where somebody spoke at a podium and now nobody's by the podium. So kids come run up to it and they want to like scream something profane.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I feel like that's what the internet became at some point. They're like,
Yes.
I have the freedom to say whatever I want. That's just eventually snowballed into some really negative spaces.
Yes.
You mentioned Reddit as an example of a space where there is monetization and curation and expectations. How do you see yourself setting those things up so you're attracting the right types of people who understand the rules of engaging positively in community?
Yeah. To your point, it's like there's a lot of trolls on the internet and especially on social platforms. You have to have the moderation layer. You have to have, it could be a person or for us, it's always a technology. Like we have an automated moderation technology that basically makes sure that what people are talking about or the comments that they're making, the kid screaming at the podium, so to speak, is like reviewed and muted if it's not adding to the positive nature of the conversation. That's huge. That's huge. Because also what you see is in social platforms, forum platforms, the loudest voices, the people who are screaming the most and saying kind of the craziest stuff, they basically take the air totally out of the room, right? And everybody kind of like takes a step back and it's like, I don't want to deal with this. It's like a very key piece of the type of products that we're building. And when this is implemented right, we see those more, I'd say, productive comments, the more productive conversations, like really get air to breathe and to kind of come to the top.
What's your big ambition? I mean, every company that wants to pioneer something new has a big vision. But what do you see happening with OpenWeb as far as really having people embrace a healthier web or healthier community to the extent that you have expectations?
Yeah, I mean, what I see this business having the potential to do, what we're building now, is it's the social layer of the open internet, right? And I think that social up to this point has been built around walled gardens, right? Like that's kind of the thing. And, you know, they're very protective of themselves and their platforms and their business and making sure that, well, they might collaborate with folks like publishers. That's not their priority. Like our priority is helping publishers to drive their ambitions forward through connections, through communities, through social functionality, and through a number of other things from an ad tech perspective. But to really build the social platform at the publisher level, that is my ultimate ambition for this company because it solves for a number of challenges I think that the publishers are facing. And then also it's a product that, you know, through years of development, we can see that the consumer really likes as well.
There's always detractors out there. Companies called OpenWeb. Some people are going to say, all the community that needs to be built, all the momentum is on the walled garden side. You just mentioned walled gardens. You're putting your energy in the wrong space. You're focused on the open web. What do you say to that?
So I think that that's discounting the power of brands that exist on the open web. I don't know that we're saying we're going to build a totally open social platform that's just open web and people will come to openweb.com or whatever. You know, this will be a specific type of social platform that we believe can scale. That's already been done before. There's good stuff out there that people utilize. And I utilize a lot of these platforms too. I love them. But you cannot discount the power of the best brands across the web. That's our customer base. That's who we're building this for. As you see through all of the data, this is still a massive audience that just hasn't been engaged in a meaningful way from these brands. So they can start kind of, I'd say, taking more control of their brand back into their own business.
Yeah. The thing about walled gardens is that everything that I follow or I'm curious about, it's all being cultivated in this single feed. And now, to your point, New York Times, Bloomberg, USA Today, whatever, all these different sites out there, they do have large numbers, but it's not curated in a single space. So now I'm going to these individual sites, which of course they all have their bases. Publishers are focused on monetization and attracting audiences, traffic and all that. Getting audiences to pull back to those spaces and now also engage in dialogue there. That is a unique opportunity that you're tasking yourself with, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I guess I'm asking the same question again. Do you find publishers, they are feeling a lot of momentum and energy around trying to solve for that? And they do want to bring people to those spaces and not just always feel like they have to push conversation to social platforms.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to see a wave of conversations, meaning like in our industry, that are talking about building communities. And I mean, sorry, this isn't like a new concept, but like, I think it's going to get in a ton of momentum as publishers are like, we have to take our fate back into our own hands. And we have all of these users. We can build these communities and like, we want to do it in a meaningful way. I think that there's plenty of publishers too that have unique IP that they can utilize to drive engagement on platforms like the one that we are building and pioneering. It's a good example. If you're a sports publisher, maybe you're a broadcaster, and you also have all these great on-air personalities, you're bringing them onto this social layer of your site and saying you can't get interactions with these folks on any of the other social platforms in a meaningful way, talking about the NFL draft or the NBA finals or whatever, and really engaging with them within this social platform. So there's incredible advantages that these publishers and these brands have to actually drive engagement and major usage of these platforms in a way that is like something that can't be done on what I would say more of the centralized social layer of the web.
I'm going to ask this question and then I'll share a little caveat.
Okay.
Who's your competition? And by that, I don't mean like who's trying to do exactly what you're doing, but what are the competing spaces, maybe beyond social or including social, that people are currently giving all their time and attention to contribute to community?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple different sides of our business. There's the community side, which is interesting because it's a B2B business because it's like we're working with large publishers, but it's also a consumer facing business because it's a product that's actually built for consumers. It's B2B2C. This is something I actually hadn't really thought about much before I started looking at the OpenWeb opportunity. And on that side, it's any type of social or community platform that exists. This could be a Reddit. This could be a Meta or an Instagram in that way. So it's basically anything that is taking consumers and having them interact on their site or on their platform. So that would be kind of the social competitive set, right? Because we're all looking for the eyeballs, right? We're all looking for the users to come and engage on these platforms. On the ad tech side, I'd say that we have an SSP, we have an email business. So, anybody that's competing in that space would be competitors to us. And that, I would say, from an SSP perspective, is a bit ubiquitous. We're one of the leaders in that space. So that's a bit differentiated, but there's a handful of companies that we compete with there. I'd say the interesting thing about the business is how you can bring all of these things together. So that social layer and then also monetization and things like that. There's not really too many folks that are doing that right now at scale. I think we're pretty good at it, but like we're looking to be by far the leaders in this space because we're the ones that are, I'd say, inventing this new social layer on the web.
How are you attracting publishers who have like the types of publishers that you want to engage with, that have the big reach, that have the beautiful brands? What are you saying to them so that they say they want to partner?
Probably the way we're known in the industry is that from our community technology, we focus on tier ones, the CNN, a Fox, a Yahoo, a HuffPo, and like the like. These publishers typically like the engagement that they get from the community product, the data that they can utilize from the community product, because it's actually pretty interesting, rich data. Again, this is more geeking out ad tech stuff, but it's really interesting, as well as the ability to monetize some of these ad formats. It's like we bring a lot of incrementality to their business beyond what they're doing right now. And I'm seeing our forums technology that I described, we're seeing an enormous amount of interest in this. And I think we're uniquely positioned because we already have built the infrastructure. We already own this technology. It's just a new application of something that already performs really well.
What's the balance you're trying to hit between delivering a fantastic user experience and monetizing for publishers?
It's really important. We're pretty ad light, I'd say, because it's not in terms of the way our business makes money, ads is certainly a part of it, but it's not what it is in totality. I think it's the same way. It's like, Apple does some advertising, but they have other revenue streams. So it's not necessarily the same as Google, which is like, that's how we make our money. So I'm saying from a consumer perspective, we try to take a pretty light touch with ads because the real value from a holistic perspective is bringing these users in, engaging these users, making them have a very good experience. So again, they come back and they spend more time on that publisher, right? Because ultimately that's who we're working for, right? We're working and building products for kind of these big tier one publishers.
Yeah. I think there is also this orientation around making sure publishers can rise to the top through what you're offering.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more of how you see yourself amplifying and helping publishers make themselves the best version of what they can be?
Yeah. I mean, just basically doing what we do really well. That's what I'd say. Building these social products for publishers and then helping them to monetize it. Like that's it. Stay out of places where you don't feel like you can add the most value. This is, I think, a really important statement for any business. There's a lot of businesses, again, I'd say in this space that are like, we can do everything. Sure, potentially you could do everything, but like, can you do everything well? And what we want to focus on is where are we going to make the biggest impact for our partners? Where are we going to build the best products for our partners? And we focus there. So I'd say the way that we help our publishers is similar to some of the things, Noor, that we've been speaking about in this conversation. Allow them to take back control and own their social audience on site and surround and build their brand around that. That's what we want to help our publishers do. And then, of course, help them to monetize it along the way.
I'll end our conversation on asking about the future. You're playing a long game. There's a lot that you need to build to get to where you want to be. What are some of your forecasts for what's going to have to happen across the next 5 years for the publisher side to really be amplified in the way that it wants to be with your assistance?
Long game, yes. This is what I'm describing is right around the corner. This is a product that's been in development for well over a year now, and we'll be utilizing it for our first test partners this fall. Obviously, you continue to build and evolve the product, but the product itself and its MVP version will be out in September. As far as building into the future, I think the publishers that have a brand, a destination that users want to visit are going to be the ones that really thrive in the future. I think the brands that might have content that you can get in a lot of different places, maybe they don't have the brand name and are like heavily dependent on search traffic are going to be challenged in the future. And so for the ones that really want to invest in building their own brand online in a more meaningful way and taking control back from the search engines, taking control back from the social platforms and really invest and build in their brand and their ecosystem, like those are the publishers that I think we're going to be able to help the most in the future.
Well, I know you said you have products that are dropping right around the corner, expecting a lot of momentum. So excited to watch. And thanks for the time, Jim.
Noor, it was great.
That's a wrap on today's conversation with Jim Daly, CEO of OpenWeb. What stood out is both the urgency and the opportunity for publishers to take back control of their audiences to build healthier, more engaged communities in their own spaces. As shared, the future of digital media isn't just about reach, but the quality of that reach, and creating conversation-forward environments can be a win for brands, publishers, and consumers. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow AdTech Unfiltered on the podcast platform of your choice. I'm Noor Naseer. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.